What's up, friends? Today we're talking Final Destination 3. I'm Tyler, welcome back to my channel, and I have to be completely honest, I absolutely adore this movie. Growing up, I very vividly remember seeing this in theaters and very vividly remember my obsession with the film following that. This has been a movie this is probably the whole reason that I'm into the Final Destination series as much as I am. They have a fantastic documentary that's on the DVD and Blu-ray. It's one of my favorite documentaries on the making of a film. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. It's so good, and honestly probably unfairly makes me like the movie even more because I just like that documentary so much. And so I attribute some of the character things that happen in the documentary to the characters in the film. So to me, they're a lot more dimensional than I'm sure that some people think, but I don't know. I just really like damn near everything about this movie. Let's get into it. So this movie starts out like all the other ones with a little intro, but this actually gets away from the whole having a lead just sleeping in bed and showing creepy shots of their bedroom, which I'm glad they got away from because that worked in the first movie, but it really didn't work in the second. So I'm glad that they didn't just try to retread that because it just wouldn't have worked. And I actually really like this because it has a carnival theme and it's showing all these different carnival things, and it still keeps with the whole idea of mundane objects being scary. And when it comes to a carnival, there's so many different things that are terrifying that I like that they did that. It adds something without getting too corny, because the second one's intro just was so corny. And I really like the theme, the music in this, and the score in this is it's great from start to finish. I mean, I'm sure they reuse a lot of just regular Final Destination stuff from the first film, but it just all really stands out to me and I really enjoy it. We are very quickly introduced to our lead character, Wendy, who Wendy. Wendy is played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and I love Winstead. She's awesome. I had such a crush on her in high school and still just absolutely love anything that she's in. She is one of few actresses that if I find out she's in something, I'll watch that more so than anything else, because she just elevates everything that she's in, and I think that it's very evident here. I should say she elevates when she actually has a decent role, because Black Christmas Remake, she's just kind of there very, very briefly, shockingly so. I definitely thought she was in that one a little more, but yeah, she's really not. Thankfully, she's the lead in this one, and it just does a great job. Obviously, the lead in a Final Destination series is kind of a linchpin for the film and keeps everything together, and I think she's the strongest lead of the entire series. Yes, even stronger than Alex. I like what her character goes through in this, and she's just a good actress, so you're able to see a wide range of emotions without it just seeming callous or weird or just overly emotional, because that's kind of what happens in the second movie. That lead Kimberly just kind of comes across as overly emotional and just doesn't work as well, especially when you're trying to have the strong lead, and that just did it no services. But thankfully Wendy I really like, and she does a good job. And in this little intro, we're able to they set up every single character in the film within the first 10 minutes, which I like. Even the ones they're setting up Kevin as I think it's Kevin. Yeah. They're setting up Kevin as not the best boyfriend for Wendy's friend. What in the fuck? There's so many names that I'm wait a minute, well, I don't know this now. I know the people's actual names. I like what they do with that, because then they kind of subvert it later. Every character in this definitely fits a stereotype, but outside of Ashley and Ashlyn, and I guess Frankie Cheeks. I feel like all these characters kind of rise above those stereotypes. There could be an argument that Texas Battle's character is just a stereotypical jock and doesn't really go through any kind of change, but I don't know. There's something that I like about him and how he just treats the situation, because he just always thinks that he's just in control of everything and has everything figured out. Unlike these other people that it's more just ignorance, not like heeding Wendy's advice, versus him where he's just kind of, it's ignorance as well, but it's also his ego, which I like that fact. Yeah, the whole intro is cool. They're setting up a big thing with Wendy and this camera, which really cracks me up, like this camera, just because it just shows the difference. Like nowadays it would just be an iPhone, but I like what they did. I like how they implemented the camera later on, which we'll get into once we get away from the intro. But I really like all the characters. They set things up well, especially because of the fact that they're all on a roller coaster, and so there has to be all these plot threads to try and bring them together. And I think that the screenwriters do a good job, because this is James Wong and Glenn Morgan who did the first film, so it's not quite like the second one where things just kind of feel all over the place. Like at least they're helping get a little better with it, which honestly is a theme throughout in terms of them just doing a better job with like step 1, step 2, step 3, rather than just like skipping steps. And most things have a reason behind why, like what is happening. Outside of Ashley and Ashlyn, there's a decent amount of like space between the deaths. It's not like weeks at a time or anything, but there's good outside of the ending. Outside of those two characters, everything is kind of spaced out a bit, which I like. I'm not a huge fan of when in these films they just kind of do bang bang deaths, which they did in the second one, because these things need to breathe. Yet in like Final Destination 2, they had multiple deaths that were literally right one after another, and so that kind of just takes away from the overall plot and like what you're coming to these films for. I'm glad that this film doesn't really do that, and with Ashley and Ashlyn, at least it like makes sense, because obviously they're always together. With the tanning bed thing, that's just an opportunity. It's not just, oh, this happens and then this leads to this. It's, oh, we have both these people in the same spot, we're gonna get them now. Yeah, getting past the intros, which, oh, by the way, when it comes to these characters, I say I like all these characters, but like I will say Julie is fucking awful. Like she is. I remember not liking her that much in all my other viewings, but this was like the viewing that I was just like, this, who makes this character and thinks that they're anything other than fodder? Everything about that character is just poorly done. Because of how poorly done she is, it's almost like once her comeuppance finally come, you kind of want it to go through with it, because you're like, she's not deserving of escaping anything. Yeah, she's definitely a problem, and I do kind of wish that they had given one of her friends like a little more development, because that also comes into play later, but we end up not really caring about her friend when we very easily could if they had just done a little something. But they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants with these films sometimes, which we'll get into when we get into the ending. We need to get into the big accident in this one, which is a roller coaster crash. Now, I really, really like this crash. They do a good job with it. It's a little overly CGI, but they still do a good job with it. I have a buddy who actually wrote like a fan script like before this one came out, because he was super obsessed with Final Destination, and he actually used a wooden coaster, which honestly probably would have been even cooler if they had used a wooden coaster. And so because of reading that script, I sometimes think of that like when I see this, where I'm like, oh yeah, there's definitely a lot more opportunities with a wooden coaster. Because I know for me personally, like I've been on many roller coasters, and like wooden roller coasters are the ones where I don't feel safe on nearly as much, and they shake and rattle a lot more than the like standard metal ones. I understand like why they did what they did. They needed loops and all this stuff, which obviously you don't really have loops on a wooden coaster, so I get it. I really do wish that they had done a little more with the crash itself, just in terms of it repeats a lot, and there's a lot of off-screen deaths. Like Wendy's boyfriend and her best friend, they're in the front and they just kind of like fly off at the beginning, and then feel like that's the same thing with Ashley Ashland and Frankie Cheeks. It's not like an actual like showing like on screen, just like quickly, and they're dispatched. Which, especially with Frankie, like we want to see something big happen, because like decapitation, something. He's the reason for the crash because it's his camera that fucks everything up. So there's things like that. Because I personally always feel like I feel like karma should be a thing in horror films. Like when a character is really shitty and sets in motion these things, they should have like the worst of it. Which is why I love in like the Evil Dead remake, the guy who brings whatever the dead back gets the worst of it, the absolute worst of it. Like it's fucking brutal. But I really like that. So the fact that they didn't really give Frankie like a big death is disappointing. Honestly, most of the deaths are just kind of like people hitting shit and splattering, and it's disappointing especially because they have like an opportunity, because the car on the tracks like goes up this loop and then it comes back. So like they could have had someone like fall off and get on the tracks, and then when the thing comes back, they get run over, sliced in half. There's a lot of potential with this crash that they don't really like lean into enough. So that's unfortunate. It's kind of just being overly picky about not liking, because there's a million different things that they could have done, but it's like, I still enjoy what they did do. They also did a really good job of like making sense of why all these people got off, why we didn't know who certain people were. But one thing I don't like is like, why did they not just refill those seats? I've been at an amusement park and they would be like just refilling those after they kick these other people off, because why send a half-empty car? Again, who cares? That doesn't really matter. I like Wendy's freak out, and the camera work actually is one thing that really stands out to me, specifically with Wendy's freakouts. They just do a good job with like how it's shot, particularly the thing at the end, which we'll get into at the end. Then the movie kind of shifts gears, and we go like a week or two into the future and get to see all these characters, most of which are pretty unaffected by the crash, even though they technically would have been dead. So it's weird that they aren't as affected as Kevin and Wendy are. It should be Ashley and Ashland's deaths are the first ones. I really like that death. Those deaths, I mean, were also so. The first film really had death as this like omnipotent being that you could even like see in certain instances. In this one, however, completely invisible. You don't see, there's no signs of this. Like it's all just cause and effect kind of things, where it's really going for an ultimate end goal of like killing these people at this specific time, rather than tried to get you there, didn't, tried to get you there, didn't. This one, it's more just like, okay, I need to set this piece in place, this piece in place, this piece in place, and then boom. I mean, I get it, but I liked what they were doing more in the first one, where it's just death, just trying over and over, and sometimes failing, sometimes he's able to get it right. This one definitely establishes that no, it's essentially just setting pieces in place so and the dominoes can all fall, and in the exact way that Jeff planned it. It also kind of takes the fun out of it, because there's less close calls and it's more just like, this is setting up this. Particularly like, the tanning bed death, but then later on in the hardware store, it just is kind of silly, the cause and effect that's going on. But I really like Ashley and Ashland's death. I like the roller coaster thing, the song playing as they're getting killed. I like all of that. Plus they're the most stereotypical, and probably next to Julie, they're the worst characters in the film. They don't really have much personality, as evidenced by the fact that they're going to the tanning salon essentially because they want to look good for the funeral. So like, I don't understand why they would do that, other than just like being shitty people, which is fine. They could be shitty people as much as they want. That's totally their right to do. But yeah, I just wish they had made them a little like less stereotypical, but it makes their deaths a little more like fun, versus if we really like those people, they go through such horrible death that it would have been bad news. bad news. Minor nitpicking. The next one is, because I'm kind of just going through the deaths, because That's really all the film is after the accident, is just going from, oh, we got to save this person, oh, we got to save this person. Oh, though I should say the whole reason they're able to know like who's next is because they figure out that there was there've been other events like this, and specifically Flight 180. The events of the first one essentially inform our protagonists of, death will come after and die, and they'll die in the order they died in the crash. So then Wendy just has to remember what order they died, which she does. But then this is where the whole camera thing comes into play, because the camera actually like shows how these people are dying. Like it shows Wendy's boyfriend getting hit by a roller coaster, showing that he died on the roller coaster. Then Ashley and Ashlyn are overexposed with like the Palm Beach thing, clearly showing the tanning bed thing. So then they're trying to find Frankie, and I really like that concept with the photos, because then it kind of just gives them more to do and specific things to look out for. Because when it's like anything can get you, I don't know, it's still fine, but when it's like specific things, I think that's just fun, because then you're like implying, you're like, ooh, that's the thing that's gonna get you. So I like that, and especially because it's cool how Frankie dies, because they're like, essentially they think they're trying to get away from just death for themselves, which then essentially them getting away kills Frankie. Kind of. This chess piece that it seems like it's coming for them, it essentially ends in Frankie's death. So I think that's cool, especially how it happens. The motor getting like pushed forward and cutting his head off. Or cutting the back of his head, like that, it looks really sweet. In the behind the scenes, they like show how they did all that stuff, and like the dummy head does not look very good. So the fact that they were able to mix and match all these different elements, so the end result is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Who's next? Oh yeah, so next we deal with Texas Battle's character, which his character name I don't even remember. I just remember the actor, because who's gonna forget the name Texas Battle? Plus he's in Wrong Turn 2, which Crystal Lowe, who plays Ashley or Ashlyn, can't remember which, she's in that film as well. So that always has stood out to me. But Texas Battle, he essentially succumbs to his ego and, pumping iron, and gets his head squished, which is a really cool death. And I like it because there's so much tension of like when they're in the weight room, and they're like, ooh, which of these things is gonna like get him, especially because they know that based on the picture, that it seems that a weight is going to crush him, specifically his head. So it's like you're constantly like, ooh, trying to pay attention to that. So then when it happens, it like almost seems like he's out of the woods, and essentially just causes his own death, which I like, because it's his own ego and hubris which causes him to die, rather than just like, oh, well, you almost got out, then you didn't because of this other thing. It's like, no, he almost got out, and then his own fucking ego essentially killed him. So I like that. A little thing that I enjoy is that right after that scene, it shows like Wendy and Kevin walking away, and they're given like these like standard high school gym class uniforms, because their clothes themselves are covered in blood. It's just like a minor detail that I really enjoy. So yeah, after that we go with Aaron and Ian, who I really like their characters a lot, which that could just be because of the documentary. I really enjoy the actors, but the characters don't get a ton of screen time, but I like the screen time that they do is just enjoyable, especially because it takes place in their deaths, or Aaron's death takes place in a hardware store. And as I said earlier, it's kind of an extreme level of cause and effect, where like, oh, well, if this one thing hadn't been placed there, then this whole Death's whole plan wouldn't have worked. But oh well, that kind of stuff happens in these movies. I still like how they do it, and especially Aaron's like nail gun death is so cool, so cool. Probably, yeah, it's probably my favorite kill in the movie, just because it's so brutal, and everything. All these kills really hit hard, and that's one thing I really like, because think in some of the other films they just don't hit quite as hard, or there's stuff off screen, or so I'm glad that they really understood, like, this is the moneymaker, let's get this shot and let's have a cool reaction. And then they also are good about once the deaths happen and it goes to a new scene, giving that like breathing room. It's not like, oh, we're immediately going into this other scene where these characters are talking. We get a little bit of some breathing room, which is good, a sign of just good filmmaking. I really like that scene. Then we're go into the whole bicentennial celebration, the festival, whatever the hell it is. I like a lot of the stuff in this. However, the stuff I don't enjoy is pretty much all the things involving Julie and her friend. The almost death, and then the death of Julie's friend. It just kind of hits so quickly, and I wish that there had just been a little more build up and a little less like happenstance with it. And then especially because then Kevin almost gets killed and gets saved by Wendy, even though it's hardly even a save. So it's just kind of odd, especially because it's like, wait a minute, so was that originally going to kill him? Like, it didn't really seem like it was that big of a deal. It's more just like an uneven aspect of the plot more than anything. But it's still a lot better just because of the fact that it then leads into this great scene with Ian chasing after them, or following after them, not chasing, because they think that Ian causes Wendy's death. So then there's just a lot of tension there. And then, which leads to it's probably my favorite scene in the film, where you have Ian yelling at them, or it's like, you're dead, Wendy, or you're next, and like it has all these like fireworks going by him. And then essentially there's a sign holding up shit that like falls on Ian and cuts him in like a crazy way. And this is something I know just because of the making of documentary, and that's that it was originally going to end right there. Like, it was going to have essentially our three leads, even though I don't know why Julie's really included in that, standing up, and then it just fades to credits, where it's like, that's not really much of an ending. That aspect doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I guess I kind of understand, and that I have trouble myself with third acts. Third acts are tough. This is also a problem with the first film, because originally the first film ended like almost in a similar way, and then they shot the Paris stuff, where it's like, how do James Wong and Glenn Morgan not understand like they have to end it on a bigger note? Thankfully, they really do end it on a big note. The fact that they are able to bookends this with like, it starts with an accident, ends with an accident. And both of them are also like dealing with trains, obviously the roller coaster and then the actual subway. So I like that, because there's still like a connection there, despite them being technically two different accidents, but there's still like the through line of it being a train on tracks. So I like that, and I really like that it shows, well, first of all, I love that when it comes out of the premonition, it has a teardrop as it's pulling back. It looks really, really cool. It's a great shot. Then I like that premonition comes, but it's a little too late, and that like they can't do anything, and you hear the train tracks like squeak and all that stuff and squeal, and clearly implying that the crash still happens, but it's still open-ended enough that you don't feel like, oh, let's watch this whole movie and then all the characters die, where it's like, chances are that's what's happening in this anyway, but it's still open-ended enough that there's a little bit of hope there. So again, it's just good filmmaking, good decision, despite the fact that it came based on a reshoot rather than just planning that in the first place. Yeah, tried getting into all this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this film as much as I did, because I know that there's a lot of people that don't consider this to be a great one. In fact, I have a good friend of mine that constantly is like, because he loves this series as well, the fact that this is my favorite is such a sore point between the two of us. So I always get a kick out of it, but I'm also understanding that it's not for everyone. If you don't like it, that's fine. I really, really enjoy it. And you know what? If you don't like it, maybe check out the documentary, like the making of, that's on the Blu-ray and DVD, and maybe it'll change your mind. And yeah, I don't know, maybe not. Either way, I really, really love this film, love this series, and this is kind of the ultimate for me in terms of, I watch this movie a lot. I watch this one probably the most of any in the series, because I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I also am very understanding that it has its issues, and that's just, if you're able to get past that, I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. But yeah, that's really all for this week. Next week we're dealing with my least favorite of the franchise, so I'm sure I'll be talking a lot of shit about it, but that's just the nature of the beast. We'll see you next week.
Hey friends, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and check out this video that YouTube thinks that you would like.